used car prices are surging again, and it's not just your imagination. After a brief period of relief, the average used vehicle now costs $400 to $800 more than just a few months ago, with experts pointing to a perfect storm of tariffs, supply issues, and economic uncertainty as the reasons why. Millions of Americans are finding themselves priced out of reliable transportation entirely, and it's messing with the economy. Remember when everyone thought the used car market would finally normalize in 2025? But that prediction aged about as well as Kanye has. That 2004 to 2011 run will never be forgotten, though.
I hate the new Kanye.
Anyway, the data doesn't lie. We're seeing price increases across every vehicle category, from economy sedans to luxury SUVs. According to recent Carfax data, non-luxury SUVs are up an average of $400, luxury vehicles have jumped $500, and if you're looking for a minivan or family hauler, prepare for an $800 increase. These aren't small numbers when you consider the average American is already stretching their budget to afford transportation. But here's what makes this situation particularly frustrating. We just went through this exact scenario during the pandemic. Prices finally started to stabilize, giving buyers a brief window of hope, only to have the market flip on them again. The pandemic-era price surge was primarily driven by supply chain disruptions and chip shortages. This time, we're dealing with a different set of factors, creating a similar outcome. First, there's the tariff situation. The current administration has implemented significant import tariffs that are directly impacting both new and used vehicle markets. These tariffs were designed to protect American manufacturing, but they're having unintended consequences throughout the automotive ecosystem. When new car prices increase due to tariffs, it creates a ripple effect. Buyers who might have purchased new vehicles are suddenly priced out, pushing them into the used market. This increased demand on used inventory drives those prices up as well. The problem is that more affordable is becoming a relative term. When the average new car costs nearly $50,000 and the average used car is approaching $20,000, we're talking about price points that require significant financing for most Americans. But this brings us to another critical factor in the used car prices, the financing situation. Interest rates remain significantly higher than they were just a few years ago, making monthly payments substantially more expensive even if the sticker price hasn't changed. The average auto loan now sits at a staggering $1.66 trillion in America, more than double what it was just a decade ago. And unlike that period, when interest rates were at historic lows, today's buyers are facing rates between 7 to 20% depending on their credit score. Let's put this in perspective. A $25,000 used car financed at 7% over 60 months costs about $495 per month. The same car at 15% interest jumps to $595 monthly, a $100 difference that many households simply can't absorb. What's particularly concerning is how many Americans are underwater on their current auto loans. According to the Washington Post, nearly 1 in 4 consumers owe more on their car loans than their vehicles are actually worth. This negative equity makes it nearly impossible to trade in for another vehicle without rolling that debt into a new, even larger loan. Dealerships have noticed this shift and are adapting their strategies accordingly. Used vehicles are now selling twice as fast as they did this time last year, according to industry analysts. The fear of further price increases is creating a sense of urgency among buyers. This surge in demand is happening despite the higher prices, creating a seller's market that further disadvantages consumers. Dealerships can afford to be less flexible on pricing when they know another buyer is likely waiting if you walk away. When we step back and look at the bigger picture, what we're witnessing is an affordability crisis in transportation. The average used car now costs just $9,000 less than the average American's annual salary before taxes. This is simply unsustainable. Transportation costs should ideally make up no more than 15% of a household budget, according to financial experts. With the average used car payment now at $520 monthly and new car payments averaging $737, many Americans are far exceeding this recommendation. This creates a cascading effect on other financial priorities. When transportation eats up 20 to 30% of take-home pay, something else has to give. Often it's retirement savings, emergency funds, or even necessities like healthcare or housing that get shortchanged. For lower income Americans, the situation is even more dire. A reliable vehicle is often essential for employment. Studies show that car owners are twice as likely to find jobs and 4 times more likely to maintain employment compared to those without vehicles. When reliable transportation becomes unaffordable, it creates a barrier to economic mobility that can trap people in poverty. To understand how we arrived at this crisis point, we need to examine some longer-term trends in both the automotive industry and American infrastructure. First, there's been a steady shift toward larger, more expensive vehicles. Manufacturers have gradually discontinued smaller, more affordable models in favor of SUVs and trucks with higher profit margins. As Newsweek reported, manufacturers cite disappointing sales results as primary reasons for discontinuing smaller, more affordable vehicles from their lineup. This shift wasn't accidental. It was engineered through decades of marketing that positioned larger vehicles as safer, more desirable status symbols. Car commercials rarely focus on practicality or affordability. Instead, they sell lifestyle aspirations and emotional connections. Simultaneously, America's infrastructure has become increasingly car dependent. Unlike many other developed nations that invested in robust public transportation, America doubled down on highways and suburban development patterns that necessitate car ownership. The Smithsonian Magazine notes that in the late 1890s, pedestrians dominated roads with cars as rare tentative interlopers. Through decades of automotive industry lobbying, this dynamic completely reversed. Today, most American communities are designed in ways that make car ownership not a luxury, but a requirement for basic participation in society. The used car affordability crisis isn't just a problem for individual consumers, it's creating broader economic ripples. When transportation costs consume a larger portion of household budgets, consumer spending in other sectors inevitably declines. Retail, restaurants, entertainment, and other discretionary spending categories feel the pinch when Americans are allocating more toward their vehicles. There's also the debt factor. The growth in auto loan debt represents money that isn't being invested, saved, or spent elsewhere in the economy. As more Americans take on longer loan terms, and 72 to 84 months is increasingly common, they're committing future income to depreciating assets rather than wealth-building investments. For younger Americans, this situation is particularly troubling. Gen Z and younger millennials are entering the workforce with significant student loan debt, facing unaffordable housing markets, and now confronting transportation costs that their parents never had to deal with at comparable ages. While rising used car prices affect everyone, certain groups are feeling the pinch more acutely. Lower and middle-income workers who depend on vehicles for employment but lack the financial cushion to absorb higher costs. Rural Americans who have no public transportation alternatives and often need to drive longer distances. First-time car buyers who don't have equity in an existing vehicle to offset the higher prices. Gig economy workers whose livelihoods directly depend on reliable, affordable transportation, and families needing larger vehicles who are seeing the steepest price increases in minivans and three-row SUVs. For these groups, the current market doesn't just represent an inconvenience, it's a genuine financial crisis that forces impossible choices between transportation, housing, healthcare, and other necessities. Another factor contributing to the affordability crisis is how dealerships approach financing. For many dealerships, the finance office has become their primary profit center, more important than the margin on the vehicle itself.
Hey, that's absolutely perfect. I'm glad to hear that. What type of credit do you got?
This has led to increasingly creative and sometimes predatory financing arrangements. Extended warranties, gap insurance, and other add-ons are aggressively pushed because they generate significant profit while being easily rolled into financing. The practice of rolling negative equity from one loan to another has become commonplace. A buyer underwater on their current vehicle by $5,000 simply adds that amount to their new loan, creating a cycle of perpetually increasing debt. Longer loan terms mask the true cost of vehicles by spreading payments over 6 to 7 years, making monthly payments appear more manageable while significantly increasing the total cost through interest. But the million-dollar question is whether this situation will improve anytime soon. Unfortunately, the indicators aren't particularly promising. Tariff policies are unlikely to change in the immediate future, continuing to put upward pressure on both new and used vehicle prices. Interest rates may eventually come down, but probably not dramatically in the near term. The shift toward electric vehicles presents another complication. While EVs promise lower operating costs over time, their higher initial purchase prices put them out of reach for many buyers. The used EV market remains relatively small and unpredictable, with concerns about battery degradation creating additional uncertainty for buyers. And even if you're a fan of his, who is buying from Elon right now. So what can consumers do in this challenging environment? While there's no magic solution, several strategies can help mitigate the impact. Consider less popular models. Sedans and smaller vehicles have fallen out of favor, but often represent better value than trendy SUVs and trucks. Being willing to travel further to purchase a vehicle can open up more competitive markets, particularly between urban and rural areas. Focus on total cost, not monthly payment. Dealers love to focus on monthly payments while extending loan terms. Calculate the total cost, including interest, before making decisions. While certified pre-owned programs are slightly more expensive upfront, these often include warranties and have been thoroughly inspected, reducing the risk of major repair costs. Getting pre-approved financing before visiting dealerships gives you leverage and helps you understand your true budget. While requiring more due diligence, private sales often offer better value than dealership purchases. A reliable vehicle with fewer luxury features will cost less upfront and over time than a feature-laden model with questionable reliability. While individual strategies can help navigate the current market, the scale of this crisis suggests we need broader solutions. Some communities are rethinking transportation infrastructure, investing in public transit, bike lanes, and walkable neighborhoods that reduce car dependence. Companies are increasingly embracing remote work, eliminating commutes entirely for some workers. Car sharing services and subscription models offer alternatives to traditional ownership, though these options remain limited in many areas. Some families are downsizing from 2 or 3 vehicles to a single car, supplemented with alternative transportation methods. And there's also an important psychological dimension to this crisis. For decades, Americans have been conditioned to view their vehicles as extensions of their identities, status symbols that communicate success and personality. This marketing-driven association makes it difficult for many people to separate their transportation needs from their emotional desires.
After years of intense work, Lexus is ready to celebrate.
The result is often overspending on vehicles that project a certain image rather than simply meeting transportation requirements. Breaking this psychological connection isn't easy, but it's becoming increasingly necessary as affordability challenges mount. Reframing vehicles as utilitarian tools rather than identity markers can help consumers make more financially sound decisions. The used car market's current trajectory isn't sustainable. Either prices will eventually stabilize or decline as market forces adjust, or alternative transportation models will gain traction out of necessity. In the meantime, consumers face difficult choices in a market that seems increasingly stacked against them. Understanding the factors driving these price increases won't make vehicles more affordable, but it can help buyers make more informed decisions and potentially avoid the worst financial pitfalls. For policymakers, this crisis highlights the need for broader thinking about transportation infrastructure, consumer protection in auto financing, and the economic implications of car-dependent development patterns. The road ahead may be bumpy, but staying informed and approaching vehicle purchases with clear eyes rather than emotion will help navigate this challenging landscape. The used car market may be messed up, but with the right approach, you can avoid getting messed up along with it. If you like this video, then be sure to stick around. I made a video about the state of buy now, pay later services right there at the top of the screen. Be sure to watch.